Yeah, I read hardly any male authors. The weird thing about this is that it wasn't really a conscious decision on my part to try to support more female authors or anything like that to purposely avoid male authors. It just kind of happened. And so today when I was watching Jean Bookish Thought's video on a reading challenge centered on reading books by women, which I'll link below, it just made me think about, hey, I could do that to support women authors, except wait, I already do that all the time without trying. So I started thinking about what male authors I do read, and why I don't read as many as the female authors I read. So the male authors that I mainly read and would recommend to others are C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and R.A. Salvatore, all of whom I believe I've talked about on this book channel. And the thing that sticks out to me about them is that they aren't just kind of so-so authors that I happen to have in my collection that I read every once in a while. They are some of my absolute favorite authors. I absolutely love the works of Lewis and Tolkien for various reasons, including nostalgia, and also because I really connect with the characters. They have a lot of emotional ties that make me love them very much. And also they're really well written adventures. And then with R.A. Salvatore, I also really, really love the characters, and I also really love the fight scenes. I think they're the best fight scenes I've ever read. And I like the plot and the epic fantasy of it. And so there are a lot of female sort of equivalents to these, I would consider, that are like my favorite women. But then if you go down below my favorites, that includes both men and women, suddenly my medium well-liked books that I would consider good, but not necessarily excellent, all written by women. So I was thinking to myself, where are all the medium to good books written by men? I have lots of medium to good books written by women, and I have a few excellent books written by men, as well as excellent books written by women. So with the law of averages and there being half the population being men, where are all the male medium to good books? Then I remembered an experience that I had earlier this year with some medium to good books written by a man. This was the Ranger's Apprentice series by John Flanagan, which if you've been around for a long time or have watched my backlog, you'll know that I read back maybe half a year ago. I read, I think, through book 7 or 8, no, maybe even 9 of the series, and recommended them to you because I thought they were good. They were nice fantasy, they were medium well written, they had pleasant characters who I connected with, the usual markers of a good book. They just didn't have any the extra wonderful, amazing stuff that would upgrade them to excellent. And then I read, I believe, the 9th book. And there's a little background to this, as whenever I'm reading, I do a bit of it is somewhat going through the back of my mind. Is this sexist? Is this racist? Etc. Is this homophobic? Etc. And it's not actively going, but there are various phrases and ways of talking about things that set off red flags, because I don't want to recommend to my audience something that will hurt them if they are of a minority or oppressed group. And I don't want to further those things by recommending those books, or internalize those thoughts by not noticing them. And this author had thrown up a few flags for sexism in the past, being that although he did meet several of the requirements for not being sexist, as in he met some of these tests. What are they called? I'll link them below. The tests that are sometimes used to help determine whether something is sexist. One is called the sexy lamp test, or that's a paraphrase, and it's where if the female character could be replaced by a sexy lamp and not have an effect on the plot, it's a sexist book. And there's another test that do the female characters ever talk to only other female characters, and when they are only talking to other female characters, are they just talking about men? Or are they talking about something else plot related, etc. So John Flanagan's Ranger series met the requirement of female characters could not be replaced by a sexy lamp, because they most certainly did have an effect on the plot. They were instrumental in various things. Both the main female characters who were included used weapons, and so they would often be very useful in helping fight the bad guys, or accomplishing other things that would have gone undone if they hadn't done it. However, the books did regularly fail the other test, being that the women characters never talked amongst each other except about the male characters. I'm gonna let that slide. But then in the 9th book, the 3 main male characters need to go on a quest to another country, and they, this time, unlike other times, leave all their female cohorts behind, which seemed normal. It went with the plot, it made sense and everything was fine. And then they got to this other country, and from the moment they got to the country till the end of the book, there were no women. None. Apparently, the people in this country spring out of the ground like dwarves. I genuinely think that he just forgot that women exist. Like, it's not like it was just the main characters and they were all alone the entire time going to do their thing. They ran into multiple villages and towns, and they went to a palace that had all sorts of servants and guards, and there was a castle town and a tournament, and yada yada. But for the entire time they were in this country, no women. No women characters. There were various side characters who were men, who were like the leaders of towns, or the guards of towns, or just lived in the towns, or etc. etc. None of them were women. And it just weirded me out so much. It just killed my motivation to continue the series. There were, I believe it's a 12-book series, so there were 3 more books. And I had them from the library because I had requested them ahead of time so I wouldn't have a gap between reading them. And I just couldn't be bothered to pick them up. Because it's like, not like I was throwing the book down in anger, but like, I have so many other things I could be reading right now. Why would I bother to read something written by someone who forgets that women exist? And it's not like it was mentioned or anything or had any explanation in the plot, like where, like that all the women were missing or they were all hidden in their houses or whatever. It was just not mentioned at all. So anyway, that's why one male author who was in the medium to good range just dropped off the medium to good range, and I just don't read his work anymore because he happened to be sexist. I genuinely think accidentally sexist, which is how most men are. They don't do it on purpose. A fair number of them do, but a fair number of them also don't. And he actually had gone to a lot of effort to not be sexist in his previous works. But there you go, his little internalized misogyny just came out in that one. And then I thought of another book by a guy that I read quite a while ago, and it was an old one. It was one of those that kind of set some trends in the fantasy genre. He kind of came up with the way that ghosts tend to be portrayed nowadays. He was one of the first ones to describe them that way. And I was reading his work and I was excited about it because it was really interesting reading such an old work and such a trend-setting one. And his world was creative. The characters weren't bad. They weren't great. They weren't bad. And then I just couldn't be bothered to pick up the rest of the series. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but now as I'm thinking back trying to figure out why didn't I keep reading that, and I'm pretty sure it's because I just didn't care. I didn't care what happened in the rest of the series, pretty much because I didn't connect with the character. And I think one of the main reasons I didn't connect with the characters, despite a lot of the things being things that I liked, like their moral code and their lack of sexism. It wasn't a sexist book particularly. The women had an effect and were well treated. Looking back on it, I think there was a lack of platonic relationships. Like, the main character was in love with a lady and she was in love with him and they had a thing, and there were a lot of emotions and stuff with that, but there were no emotions, at least not very heavy emotions, for other people. There weren't any really interesting brotherly relationships or friend relationships or parent-child relationships or anything like that. And I think I have noticed in the various books written by men that I've read, there isn't a big emphasis on platonic relationships like there is in a lot of the books that I read by women. And that could definitely be another factor that influences me towards fiction written by women, because I love platonic relationships, and romantic relationships that aren't accompanied by a bunch of platonic ones just don't do it for me. So those are some factors that have put me off male authors once I've started reading them. But I also think that I start reading a lot more books by women than by men. So as I was thinking about this, I started to analyze why I pick up books in the first place and why I would pick up more by women than by men. And part of it is with a negative association with fiction written by men that I have had in the past because of these negative experiences. But I think a lot more of it is where my recommendations are coming from, and that is mainly from Bookstagram and BookTube, where I follow one male booktuber and maybe 3 or 4 male bookstagrammers, which the Instagram part isn't shocking at all considering that it's taking artful pictures of books, which isn't something that a male who likes to conform to gender norms would probably do. But I don't really know why I don't really follow any male booktubers, except that I never find them, and whenever I search up tags or any of the various ways that I discover booktubers, they're just all women. They're all women. Shout out to Troy Towell, who is the one male booktuber I follow. You're really cool. The thing about Troy, though, is that he pretty much recommends books by women, which is how we actually encountered each other. He found some fan art that I did of Eve Dallas of the In Death series by Nora Roberts / JD Robb, which he was searching up because he likes the series. So if you know of any other male booktubers, feel free to recommend them. I don't know where they are. Or male bookstagrammers for that matter. And then I think that the same reasons that I have put down various books by men there's been a similar experience for other female readers and thus female booktubers and bookstagrammers. So they just never recommend those books, so they recommend more books written by women, and then I read those they've recommended, and then I end up recommending them to other people, and it's a big cycle of only things we actually like getting through. So yeah, if you know of a male author or are a male author who writes books where the characters have deep emotions and where they have really strong platonic relationships with each other and where they aren't sexist, recommend them to me, because I'd love to have a little bit wider of a reading scope. Ooh, this one's by a guy, Mr. Lemoncello's Library Olympics, and it's a series of Mr. Lemoncello's Library. I just got recommended this by a female booktuber, and I had to check if it was a guy because Chris is kind of androgynous, but there's a picture. So yeah, if I end up liking these, that's one. So I would really love to know if you are a woman and you have experienced this same thing where you get recommended mainly books by women, and when you've tried books by men you don't really like them, or if you have the opposite experience, or if you're a man, do you feel like you have a preference for books written by your own sex or the opposite? I'd love to know. These just happen to be sitting next to me on my bed because I'm really good at storing library books and I put them in places that make sense. So, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Bye!